Hey, everybody, you're listening to and watching the Comic Book Bears podcast. I'm Bill Zanowitz.
And I'm Steve Morey.
And we are your hairy, heavy homos that talk about comic books, but you don't have to be a hairy, heavy homo to listen in, or in this case, stream in. And we don't have Brother Brian with us this week, but we do have somebody more than ably sitting in his seat. Please welcome, for the first time to the show, though, he has been a regular contributor on the streams, so it doesn't feel like it's his first time. Jon Runyan. Jon is from a Comic Book Look podcast, and he's going to tell us about that and some other stuff before we get going. So, Jon, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you, guys. And again, I've said it before. I'm going to say it again. It is humbling being amongst comic book royalty. So, thank you, guys. Yes.
I don't
Happy
know
to be here.
I don't think we rank higher than Lady in Waiting, but okay.
But I hold the chamber pots. I guess it's my job.
And I make the stew.
I helped.
I don't know what kind of creepy fairy tale we're putting together here. But we do have a bunch of stuff to talk about tonight. We are in the midst of a few weeks into the TV season that has seen particularly CW shows based on comic books, but you also have the cloud that's been hanging over everything known as WandaVision, and some of those people, they got disappointed, but you know.
Hi, James. Thank you for joining. Yeah, the cloud of WandaVision. Oh my God. I mean.
Oh, I thought I lost you there for a split second.
Oh no. The cloud of WandaVision, I'm glad that you called it that. Mm-hmm. Because I think there were so many fan theories floating around and like just really pushing themselves forward that I think people started to think that was going to happen, that everything that people were speculating about was going to happen. Mm-hmm. And it didn't. I mean, some amazing stuff happened. I think it was the whole thing from beginning to end. I loved every episode. I was hanging on every word, every minute. Loved it. And yeah,
we can talk about that when we get into the segment. So
yeah.
But, you know, I'm very excited to hear some stuff about Jon because I don't know. So Jon, first of all, and this is the stock question we ask everybody the first time they come on the show. How did you initially get into comic books?
Yeah, so definitely product of my my time during the 90s. That darn X-Men cartoon, hook, line, and sinker, baby. So I tuned in Saturday morning, Jubilee's at the mall, freaking out, shooting her fireworks at a Sentinel, and I'm just like, this is the coolest thing ever. And so I was hooked, and I'm watching those episodes coming out, right? And then actually for comic books proper, it's really interesting. We moved to Japan. So I started watching the X-Men cartoon when I lived in Nebraska. Dad's in the military. We moved to Japan to an Air Force base, and they had one spinner rack at the little not commissary, it was like a little shopette is what they called it. So it's like a little place to go get food that's closer to your house. And so I would always walk over there, and I saw one day there's a spinner rack of comics. And so I had to start getting my different issues. My first comic ever that I purchased over there, and I still have it. It is Beat to All Hell. I've read it so many times. I think I clipped a coupon off the back potentially. But Uncanny X-Men 322 is the first issue, and that's where Juggernaut gets punched across the Marvel U by Onslaught. So this is right before the Onslaught event. And that was my first ever comic. So I still have it. It's proudly part of my collection. I don't imagine there's too much resale value on it because it's just been completely destroyed. But from there, rocking with Uncanny, the normal X-Men line, and X-Force. Those were my three steady Freddies. Started picking up some X-Factor, just learning more about the characters. But let me tell you what, that X-Men 90s cartoon was a real good introduction for me to really get passionate about some of those characters. Alpha Flight, met him for 10 minutes in that episode they were in. And now I have a whole wall here. I have a whole wall dedicated to them. I love Alpha Flight. And so it's a really cool thing. You know, it was a really cool product. And I think that a few of those shows did a really good job of highlighting those characters like Spidey or Silver Surfer for that matter. So yeah, so that's how I got into comics. Ever since then, I did fall out during high school into college a little bit. Everybody kind of does. And then, boy, did I jump back in thanks to the Dark Avengers and everything when all that was going on. I was like, man, this is awesome. And I just jumped right back in. So here we are. I love Marvel. I have dipped my foot into the DC pool, though, as you'll see tonight. I can try my best to hold my own. I'm no Bill, but I will do my best. And honestly, I read for the story. I read for the characters. And so that's the way that I see it. There's a few X-Men runs that I struggled with over the past couple of years, but man, this new stuff is right up my alley. It's so great. I love it. And so, yeah, so that's kind of my origin story with comics. And definitely, I just enjoy the community around it. Like for me, buying the books is one thing. That's cool. But I love talking about it with other people. Like that's my favorite part, is meeting other people that appreciate these things. Or if they have a different perspective, tell me why, because that's awesome too. I love that. And I've been exposed to several new titles by tuning into you guys, to tuning into other shows. So it's just such a robust community and a bunch of cool people.
All right.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned you lived in Japan. Did you get the X-Men cartoon in Japan?
So the X-Men cartoon itself did not come over in Japan, unfortunately. Our programming was very odd over there. Yeah. So channels were a little different, but it was also cool. So I got to watch a lot of music videos on their MTV was called Channel V. And so back when music was played on those stations, and it was a lot of fun just to see like how people were reacting to TLC's fan mail album when that dropped with No Scrubs. Oh my God, that was a hit. So it was good. Celine Dion's Titanic theme song, that was huge. So it was so fun to see how American artists translated into a different country. And it was so fun to kind of follow along and see that. But yeah, for Marvel content, not so much, unfortunately. Star Wars movies were huge. So when Episode 1 came out, oh, that was hot. And then the action figure re-releases that they started doing for Star Wars action figures, those were everywhere. That was cool.
Okay, the main reason I asked is because there is, and you can find it on YouTube, when the cartoon did air, and I think there was a substantial period of time from when it aired in the States to when Japan aired it. It has a totally different theme song, and that's just amazing. That cry for the moon, it's just amazing.
I think you may have exposed that to me a couple of months ago.
Really? Okay.
I was freaking out a little bit, like, what is this? And it was my first time seeing it, and I was just like, this is awesome,
I thought we finally had somebody who watched it contemporaneously. But oh well. Yeah. So you say you're a big Marvel fan. Yeah. What is the origin of your interest in the black light posters that are behind you? I got to know that.
Yeah. So I actually used to do an interview series on Comic Book Look called Comic Book Look After Hours. And so I would interview comic creators and just do a one-on-one situation. So one of my creators was Gary Scott Beatty, who does a lot of like horror comics. Very nice gentleman. And we were talking, and I'm looking in the background, and he has like the sweet like Medusa poster, and it's all in video. Like I'll share a link to my reaction. It's all in that video, and it's the funniest thing. But he just said, "Oh, John, watch this. My wife is good to me." And he turns the light off, and the black light comes on, and they all light up, and I'm just like, "What is this?" So he proceeded to tell me about this series of posters. So I got 1, 2, 3, and then I'm gonna move my camera. Number 4 is right here. I got 2 more in tubes in the basement. So these 4 have been custom framed. And if anyone is wondering, when you go get something custom framed at Michael's or whatever, the glass actually does block UV rays from entering in. So their Michael's glass blocked the black light from making that glow. So these all have special normal glass in them. So that way when I turn my black light on, it all lights up. So it does protect your photos when you go get things custom framed. Which is really interesting to learn. The matting and everything was all custom. I just wanted something sharp and fun. These Pop Funko ones were more recent with the new Pop Funkos they released. And then like the Dr. Doom you see over my shoulder on the bottom is a tribute poster to this series. And then I have another one with like Dr. Octopus too behind me. So.
All right, cool.
But I love them. I love them.
The store that's closest to me, which doesn't have new comics, it's all old comics and toys and stuff. In the old shop, but it's still displayed in the windows, they have the Silver Surfer and the Doctor Strange.
Yes.
And when I inquired about the price, I almost dropped dead.
Yeah, they're crazy, aren't they? Yeah. I watched them on eBay. The other 2 I got, one's a really cool horizontal Doctor Strange one, and it's kind of crumbly on the sides or whatever, but it was like $100 discount, and I'm like, okay, fine, I'll take it. Because for me, I'm not looking for pristine. They're from the 70s. I get it.
Yeah.
And so, and then the other one I got was Namor actually flying by the Statue of Liberty. So kind of random and awesome. But yeah, so he's still in the tube too. But yeah, there's a couple more out there I want to get my hands on. So
all right.
Yeah.
And why don't you tell us? Oh, go ahead, Steve. Sorry.
I was going to say we've got a couple comments here, and this could probably lead right into the next question, Bill, that you have. But first, just as a quick note to the earlier mention of WandaVision, it was Agatha all along, which of course we knew, didn't we? But anyway, Brian Pittard stopped by. He is, able to say hello, but unfortunately he can't stay. But looking good, guys. Thank you so much, Brian. And then, of course, when John was talking about seeing the X-Men cartoon, how young is John? We could speculate about your age, but we won't. A lady doesn't reveal her age, of course.
Exactly.
But
especially lady in waiting.
But James mentions here, do they know that you've got your gay card canceled yesterday? And so how would that have happened? I think, Bill, that kind of leads into your question. I'm guessing where you're going to be asking about a comic book look.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead. Yeah, tell us about a comic book look and tell us how you got your gay card canceled.
It got canceled.
Very easy to reinstate that. A couple of Lady Gaga cookies and you're good.
Okay, I was wondering what the process was.
Yeah.
All right. So
off the draft stamped envelope.
So comic book look, you guys. We'll be 10 years old coming up this summer, which we're so excited about. So right up with comic book fairs. A comic book look is myself, and then my co-pilot Tom Devine, and we actually started together at a prominent financial institution here in town, and we worked just over the wall from each other. Found out we both like comics, and then we both started exchanging comics that we were buying just to read them. And I would be talking about, man, Dark Avengers was so awesome, and he would argue with me like, dude, this is so stupid. And we finally decided, like, let's do a show about this because it's funny. Like, our coworkers were cracking up around us because we'd be making fun of each other. So we started a comic book look with the premise of we don't really agree on much of anything, but we're going to have our opinions about comics. When we review comics, we hit it with a 6 out of 6 beer rating or 5 out of 6, etc. So we do our beer ratings. So we've kept that tradition. And it's really just been a really fun journey. For a while there, we were networking with like a media site, Inveterate Media Junkies, so they were helping get the word out about us too. And then we just kind of went back to doing our own thing. But it was a great experience. We got a lot of cool viewers through there. We had a flag from Ireland shipped to us, so we had that displayed in the background of our original set for a while. So when people start mailing you stuff like, dude, thanks for being awesome, I'm like, awesome, thank you. It's so humbling. And so that's the main thing we've really enjoyed over the years is just connecting with people, getting to go to different cons and representing. We've had a few of our friends join in on the fun as well. Ken, who commented just moments ago here, is actually my fiance. So he was on the show for a period of time as well, and so he's probably tuning in right now, giggling at me downstairs. So. But yeah, it's been a really fun journey. So if you guys are interested on listening to just banter, opinions, and good old-fashioned fun, I mean, we keep it very lighthearted, and yeah, we're not afraid to throw a book under the bus if it's not good, and we'll argue about it if it is good. So yeah, so it's a lot of fun though, and we love having guests on. Bill and Steve were both outstanding guests, by the way, and I had several people tell me on the side they really enjoyed both of you. So
awesome. That's so nice to hear.
You.
Since I've bogarted everything, and again, we still have to hear about how you lost your gay card.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Steve, do you have anything for John there?
Well, no, we've talked, Bill. When you and I guested separately on Comic Book Look, it was just really great chatting with you and Tom. I think it was just it's really fun banter back and forth, and you guys have a very very snappy repartee with each other, as well as about the books. Like there's just a really great cadence that you talk about and show your excitement with the books, and I love that. But I do know that you are a huge Marvel guy. I mean, that's where you kind of started. I think that's where a lot of us started. Bill, I think you started with DC.
But it's also very interesting because there's a lot of parallels between Jon's story jumping on the X-Men and me 20 years earlier jumping on the Super Friends, and that being the ball that really got things rolling for me. I mean, I had some comics. I still have a Walt Disney Comics digest from 1972 that somehow survived everything, and but I was like really like digging the parallels about how important something not in the medium that we're talking about in a connected medium really set the ball rolling into this one. So there was a lot I appreciated with your story there.
Oh yeah. But I did want to ask, so you started with Marvel, you kind of, like you said, you'd gone away for a while, and what brought you back was like Dark Avengers and that period, that big Marvel event era that kind of happened with that. Have you found some non-Marvel stuff that you just absolutely can't live without?
That I can't live without. We were talking about this, before the show, but I am just head over heels right now for our friends at Vault Comics, which I know we might be talking about some titles later here, but just the quality and realness of the stories are just so refreshing to me. So an example, I have a thumbnail around here somewhere. I'm like looking for my pile now and I can't find it, of course. Oh, it's behind me, that's why. A thumbnail is an example from Vault that I love it because it's not superheroes. It's a different take on it. It's still got some what is going on questions, but it also has rich characters. And that's what I read for, is rich characters that just really grab me and say, hey, check this book out. So when a story draws me in, it doesn't have to be superheroes. And I think that the Vault creative team, at least with this Nightfall series that they're doing, I haven't picked up one of the books yet that I haven't been happy with. So
that's great. That's good. And it's tough. Sometimes it's a tough transition. And it kind of is sort of like the face of comics. A lot of people who don't read comics think that everything's just superhero based. And if you don't like superheroes, then, well, there's nothing for you. And, there's so much beyond superheroes in comics. It's an amazing medium that you can do so much with. And, especially in the past 20 years, there's been a lot more sort of like an indie side, but there has always been great indie stuff. I mean, even, back, we don't call them the big two, DC and Marvel, but there was Charlton with their superheroes, like way back when. It was Fawcett with Shazam until they got sued to oblivion, and DC got all of their stuff. But the superheroes kind of are were usually a big thing, but 70s with comics and 80s with like the huge indie boom, and there's just been some really great stuff that's come out that's not necessarily superhero. And it's hard for a lot of people to make that decision or that transition sometimes, because you have to find that good story or those good types of stories that make you want to.
But I also think you see the reverse. Yeah, I also think you see the reverse of that, though, that there is a breed of comic reader that doesn't ever touch the superhero stuff, and God knows there's enough in the other bucket for them to stay satisfied. So and that wasn't something that was present in the 80s. That's been something that's grown over time, because even a lot of the indie stuff in the 80s, whether it was American Flag or John Sable or Nexus or Mage, there's there's more connective tissue to superheroes than I think a lot of people are aware of.
Elementals, that was one of my favorite 80s books that I just rediscovered. But no.
But to take on this burning question from James, so thank you, James. I opened up about how I procured a copy of Hulkling and Wiccan from this King in Black event or whatever. And I'm just like, I'm horrible. I might be a horrible gay comic book nerd here, but like I'm not familiar with them as a couple or as characters at all. So like when they entered the Marvel U, I wasn't reading any other titles like Young Avengers or whatever they were in. And so that just, James was just totally like, John, turn in your gay card now, And it was so funny. But it's still, for me, I read it as a gesture of I want to get to know them, and I'm sorry I'm late to the party, So I don't think I'll make their friend list or anything like that. And I probably won't get an invite to the wedding, but at least I tried. So
yeah, I am with you in Young Avengers being a whole. I know what happened.
Mm-hmm.
Wikipedia's there for that.
Yeah.
But I think I have read 3 issues, and I think in all of those cases, those were free digital ones. Oh, I did lie. I do have the Secret Invasion crossover with Runaways.
Okay.
But I've never read that. At some point, it was really cheap on the digital sale. So
and that's funny because I would totally read that for the Secret Invasion involvement, because that's what led to Dark Reign, which is the love of my life. And then I also love the Runaways. I think a lot of the young characters have a lot of potential. And Runaways, the thinking of the show on Hulu, I actually really enjoyed it. I liked it. It was cool. It was fun. It was something different because I never thought I'd see a show, so I'm watching Runaways. Oh, Cloak and Dagger. Oh, they're together in 2 episodes. Okay. And I never thought I'd see the day. So I'm just appreciative, I guess, with that. But that's funny. I'll have to check and see if I can find that now, Bill. God, you guys always getting me into trouble. Recommendations.
It's only 3 issues, so it won't really break the bank for you. So that's a good thing.
Well, and I do have to say that if you are interested in sort of like a deeper dive, I mean, obviously your Children's Crusade and all of that stuff, but the really big, good to me, the great Young Avengers run was, of course, the McKelvey and Gillen Young Avengers series. I think it was only 16 issues. 16, 17 issues. It was really short, but it's like just that 1 year, and you get to love those characters so much. And I think that came out, maybe 2016, 2015. It was something around there. But excellent stuff. And actually, James has another note there. Young Avengers were literally a police case here in 2019. Then Mayor of Rio tried to get the Children's Crusade book banned from a book fair because it showed 2 gay characters kissing. Ooh, well, sounds just like you have some of the 1 million moms also in Brazil. 1 million moms, which is like 3 people. So
and James followed that up with the book sold out, obviously.
The book sold out, obviously. Yeah. Controversy is also great advertising and marketing.
Okay, well, we mentioned the Runaways TV series, so that's a good transition over to other TV series that we should talk about. Over the past few months, it's been, I guess, probably the first of this wave was Pennyworth, maybe? Was Pennyworth the first one to premiere? Pennyworth or Riverdale. They were both really close, but it was right after the first of the year that we did get basically a return of comic book based TV, and unquestionably the biggest event out of these series that we're going to be talking about is WandaVision, which completed its run last Friday. Steve, why don't you give us a little background on WandaVision?
Well, simply put, WandaVision is a 9-episode meditation on the meaning of trauma and the processing of, PTSD and grief. But it's also an amazing Marvel Cinematic Universe, the first MCU, fully integrated MCU TV series that has been produced by the Marvel Film Studios, the Marvel Studios, not the TV studios, but Marvel Studios that handles the films under Kevin Feige. This was their first series, and it shows the quality was brilliant. You're using the exact same cast The predominant cast is, of course, straight from the films. And the production quality is just gorgeous. The special effects, everything is it basically makes it a 9-part film, something that you could see, actually happening on the big screen, which we didn't have to, because it's also, a wonderful look back, kind of a love letter to the history of TV in America as well, because each episode, most of the episodes,
particularly sitcoms.
Particularly sitcoms. Family sitcoms. How, from the 50s, 60s, 70s, and all the way up to the 2010s, with different styles, obviously, for the episode in which Wanda and Vision and their growing family participate in, and, just kind of play with all of those tropes from those eras. Well, at the same time, reality starts poking through and interfering with this fantasy that that Wanda is living out with Vision. But some amazing cameos from some great upcoming characters. We had Monica Rambeau showing up as first a sword agent who was coming back after the blip. She actually had disappeared during the blip. We had Randall Park's character, the FBI agent from Ant-Man 2, also making an appearance and having a much stronger presence. And then, of course, good old Darcy. We love Darcy from the first Thor movies. She is also... she also showed up to have a pretty impactful presence in this series as well, introducing, again, some new side characters for the Marvel Universe, and a really big side character for the Marvel Universe that probably will become one of the new sort of Avenger characters as well, and an interesting villain who didn't necessarily turn out to be the main villain, even though she kind of was the villain. Yeah. I mean, of course, they had to have a villain, but
in some ways, I don't even see it as a villain as much as an antagonist. But it didn't fall into. It certainly didn't fall into the villain category that I think a lot of people projected onto this series.
Yeah,
leave it at that.
And of course, she did sing. Catherine Hahn did sing the her own theme song.
Yeah. I love that this show has made her a star. I mean, she's a star.
We've always known it.
We've always known it. She's unquestionably the breakout. And one thing I absolutely love about where the Marvel Cinematic Universe is you never know when these breakout characters are going to happen. And I love, as weird as it is, I love the effect on comic book back issues, where you got to be kidding me, like, people are paying this much for the first appearances of Agatha Harkness. Now the latest one is Werewolf by Night #3, because that's the first Darkhold.
Oh really? Oh right.
Yeah, so it's crazy. I love that. I love that, how turbulent that is. It's that's a fun ride for me to observe from the background.
Definitely.
I'm not going to shell out that money, but
yeah, I'm not going to be
a lot already anyway. A lot already anyway.
But it's just this was such a great series because it played fast and loose with actual canon, comic book canon. So there was enough clues, there was enough breadcrumbs there to string people who were huge comic fans, who knew the history of these characters and knew the storylines and all of that, to kind of to follow, and of course throw up any kind of crazy fan theory that could all potentially work or not work. But then also people who only knew the movies or only knew the TV series could actually also still really enjoy and speculate as much as they desired, which did have, in a way, had some negative effects. The amount of speculation there, for some stupid reason. But people are always gonna, get pissed off if exactly what they wanted to happen didn't happen. But that's not the point. All this had already been made. The writers were not doing this to answer your fan theories. They were there to tell an amazing story, and I think.
But at the same token, I also think that's testimony to how passionate some people get over this.
Yeah.
You just have to be realistic about your expectations. It's a 9-ish. This is not going to be the bridge from the this isn't going to be what connects the Marvel Cinematic Universe with the Star Wars universe. She wasn't wielding the Force. Please. Oh, they're out there, baby.
But to that point too, I mean, they even Marvel themselves also gave a huge, massive wink and nod to expanding it into another acquired universe of characters that they just got from Fox the other year by having, the Fox's X-Men version of Quicksilver make an appearance, which of course, ended up being kind of a bait and switch and, kind of a goof anyway. But the fact that happened, I don't know about you guys, but when he showed up at the door, I think my mouth fell off of my face, fringe first episode, whatever, just freaking out, off the couch, just floored.
My exact post was they went there and then they went there.
Yes.
And it really, I don't think you're going to top anything for me in the last, in the next few years to really occupy the shock that that episode had. I mean, it was just so beautifully handled too.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun. There was you didn't know that it was necessarily coming. You knew something was coming, but you didn't know that was coming. I think that was really great. But, again, Marvel does this almost every time they have a movie. There's something that's a shock and that's not expected. And the next series, which starts next week, the 19th. No. Tomorrow. No, next week. Yeah, the 19th.
Next week.
Okay. Yeah. Next week, the 19th. Falcon and Winter Soldier. Who knows? Maybe there might be something wild and crazy that pops up in that. And then, of course, Loki's coming later this year, and we know that's just going to be batshit and wild. And they'll throw so much stuff in there.
We've been yapping. Let's hear from John what he thought.
Oh, yeah, man.
I'm sorry.
WandaVision as a whole, man. I love that continuity. And when we finally get a Marvel TV show that says it's going to matter and it's going to pertain to the movies S.H.I.E.L.D., which S.H.I.E.L.D. didn't. And WandaVision actually delivers on that. So these flashbacks, we're using actual footage with the same people, with expanding on their backstories. I mean, my heart was just like, oh, I was so happy the whole time. I think that mechanically, you had made a comment about, this could be a movie. And I kind of sit back, though, and I kind of think about that, mechanically, what does that look like on the big screen? So is it the Please Stand By, and then we start with the next segment, the different era? You know what I mean? What does that look like if it's a movie, I guess? And then, of course, with the credit scenes and stuff like that. But I just kind of was like, I love that it was framed as a TV show, and it was a TV show, and they brought that credit. They brought that story. Little details here and there. First of all, the kiddos were just well cast. I love that so much. And then I love little nods to the old movies. So in the final episode where Wanda appears behind Agatha and does that trippy walk thing where she blinks out or it speeds her up or whatever. And then she does the spell that took them to the scene at the post. Yeah. But how she moves all jagged, that's exactly how it was in, Age of Ultron. And I just thought that was such a fun nod back to her old power set, but it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of old, a lot of new. Vision really shined for me as well. It's really fun to get to know that character because I didn't really get as much of that from the movies. I felt like I wanted more of him in the movies, and so this was that real good opportunity to just kind of sit back and take in the character with some additional flashbacks surrounding the movies. So it's just a bunch of extra bonus content for me, and I absolutely adored it. I thought it was great.
That's a good point. I mean, these are two characters that, although they were, featured players, in the movie since Age of Ultron, they really haven't had a chance to shine. I mean, they had moments in Infinity War, but then Vision dies at the end of Infinity War, and Scarlet Witch is blipped. So there's nothing happens until Scarlet Witch shows up towards the end of the last movie. But even then, she has some like really powerful things, but there's no character development. They kind of gloss over almost her grief, and that was this show. Like the show gave not just her backstory, her origin, but also like, well, what happens? She just lost the love of her life.
But,
and
at the same token, with films like that, there's only so much bandwidth that you can dedicate.
It was already 3 hours.
And I think this type of setup where I don't want to say non-marquee characters, but characters that you may not think automatically would headline a film, get their day in the sun and benefit from it. I think even more than they would in films because of the extended nature of the stream, of where we are with streaming and series nowadays. Yeah.
So smart though, and I guarantee you now when I watch Endgame and Thanos is like, I don't even know who you are, I'm gonna yell, I know who she is. Get with it, Thanos. Get your Disney Plus. Watch it.
It's free with Verizon. Just get an unlimited plan. I mean,
you can get it straight to your ship or whatever. Relax.
I'm gonna say some things I didn't like about the series now, if that's okay. There's very few.
I'm just gonna put you on mute. Is that okay?
I did think that, especially in the early episodes, that Elizabeth Olsen was far better suited for the material than Paul Bettany was. By the end of the series, I liked where it went. I also loved the development with White Vision. That was one of my favorite developments in West Coast Avengers in the late 80s, where Vision literally had a reboot. And where that character goes from here, I think is, it could be Vision Wanda. There's something there. The secondary baddie sword dude, that was by the numbers. I thought there could have been a bit more nuance to his machinations, and that's it. That's it.
The other thing too I was thinking about was just that sick visual where it's the two of them and it's got like the yellow and the red, so like the yellow's going to him, the red's coming from her, and I just thought that was just so freaking cool and powerful, like just seeing how she made him or emulated him or whatever. And I can't get that scene out of my mind. Like when they first said we're doing a show about this, I literally sat back like, what in the world? Like how are we gonna pull this one off? And then the more I learned about it, I'm like, ooh, I want to watch that. And so that scene really kind of was holistically what the series was for me, was just seeing these two characters come together to weave a really cool story.
And actually, James kind of hits the nail on the head here. WandaVision didn't fulfill fans' expectations. The expectations were crickets. I can fill in what I had for expectations for this, because there were bits and pieces that were being sort of released before the show came out, that it was going to be like a romp through television history, and it's like, oh, it's all going to be kind of trippy and whatever, and eventually they're going to break free. I mean, I knew that the television tropes, like the television show tropes, were coming, but not how it was being framed. When it switched gears in, I think it was the 4th episode, where all of a sudden we see what's happening outside the Hex. We see everything else with Sword, and we see Monica, and we see Jimmy, and we see, everything that's happening outside of Wanda's world. That's where I think it shifted so much for me. I was like, this is not what I was expecting. Like, I did not see it going in this direction. And then, of course, everything kind of ties together and starts intermixing, and you get what you get. And to me, it was amazing. And yeah, I mean, there are some bits and pieces here and there that may have been kind of like, they could have done that a little bit, but it was gorgeous.
Yep.
All right.
I'm impatiently waiting for, though, is like Disney to reach out and say, comic book bears, a comic book look, we need some extras.
Yes.
Do it.
We're looking for bearded podcasters. Anybody?
I'm in New Jersey.
Yeah.
I could very well be a Westview resident.
But yeah, I mean that was such an incredible show from Marvel. But what about a new show from DC?
Well, we had a bunch over the last
Yeah.
few weeks. We had a bunch. I think the first one to hit, I'm not exactly sure on the dates, but I think the first one to hit was on Epix, which was the second season of Pennyworth. I know you haven't watched it yet, Steve, but you know how batshit crazy season 1 was.
Yeah.
Season 2 so far has been season 1, Hold My Beer.
God.
And again, just for people who aren't aware, it's in this highly fictitious version of the 60s in England. The country is basically split apart in civil war in the second season. I don't think that's a big spoiler. You've probably seen some stuff of that. And we see Alfred Pennyworth in his post-army career trying to make the best of things. And in doing so, he encounters people like Thomas and Martha Wayne, in very different versions of Thomas and Martha Wayne than I think anyone has been used to. And it's batshit crazy. It just takes every sort of turn you can think of. It does. Just in this last week, episode 5 of this season, Alfie Pennyworth makes enough bad decisions for 2 seasons. In the space of 1 episode. So I'm not even going to describe it. Maybe once, Steve, because I know you're eventually going to get to it. Maybe we can talk about that then. I think the next one that came through was Black Lightning in its 4th and final season. It's been relentlessly depressing by my estimation. After the Markovian War in Freeland, this week had a development that I think was almost on par with what we talked about with Pietro. So again, Steve, once you see that, just be prepared for a really big shock. And that just hit this weekend. But everybody's acting incomprehensibly, and it probably is time to wrap the show in a bow. Cress Williams is the absolute worst actor I've ever seen acting drunk. It's just something he can't do.
He's got a really great emotional resonance, and you're like acting drunk, and I'm like, yeah.
It's the pits. It's the pits. And then also with CW, we've had The Flash. Which though it's what season is it in? Seventh season. They're basically, for the first at least 4 episodes, they're going through the scripts that they weren't able to film, so it really does feel like 6.5. And that's all I'll say about
Batwoman. Don't forget about
Batwoman. Now I know you've watched some, so this is more I can throw this at you. So why don't you tell us about some of the developments in Batwoman season 2?
Well, John, I think you're caught up with Batwoman as well.
I am on episode. I just finished episode 4 last night.
So. Oh, okay, yeah. So you're mostly caught up. So yeah, I mean, Batwoman. Obviously, we have a new actress stepping into the role, and not just a new actress, but a completely new character. Javicia Leslie came in to play Ryan, who essentially kind of falls into the role of Batwoman. She discovers the Batcave. She discovers her, the Batwoman equivalent of the Scooby Gang, and very quickly integrates or becomes part of like the gang. She's now working at the bar. She's trying very hard to investigate what happened to Kate Kane, because everybody still thinks she's alive. And of course Alice continues her batshit like complete other, like her story. I don't know, like every time there's like some development with her, it's like it just goes off the rails, and then she's got another character development, and you're like, oh, so she's had her memory erased. She was on this island in the middle of like nowhere, and she was in love with this guy named Ocean because I guess Stream was taken. Like just all sorts of wildness. Now we've got an art thief Spider-Man, who's also a very like proud gay out character, and just sort of all sorts of wildness that happens in the show. And I love it. I really enjoy it. I think Javicia Leslie's getting more comfortable with the role, because I think at first, the first couple episodes, not just her character Ryan, but then also I think she was still trying to feel out this role and like the physicality of it, and her delivery, because it's tough to act in that big hard rubber suit sometimes, and doesn't always come off great. But
I agree. I actually, to be honest with you, I actually like this season way better than season 1. So Kane is a cool character in the comics, but and Ruby Rose, nothing on her at all. It just, the chemistry just wasn't there. Like something was off for me.
She was like, so wooden.
I wasn't feeling it at all. I'll say, Alice as a character doesn't do it for me either. I'll be honest with you. I kind of wish she would go away. But I am going to say this new Batwoman is out freaking standing. I love the messaging. I think about, younger viewers that tune in and see, oh, there's someone different, that can be a superhero too. And I just think that's so powerful and so cool. So I actually really, really appreciate that. The show is very progressive, and I love that too. I think that it's fun to show, just a different side of the DCU. And I hope that other people are enjoying it as much as I am. I love the lead, though. I think she's wonderful. And especially when she ditched the red wig. I mean, the red wig's iconic, but I love just seeing her do her. Like, I think it's so cool. So I don't know. That's
there's some red tint when she, when she's in action, but I totally agree about the wig thing.
Seeing her take over the lead of the show, not the lead role, but the lead of the show. As I said, I wouldn't have necessarily tagged wooden on Ruby Rose, but now that I see her and see how vibrant the nature of a Batwoman character can be, I definitely feel that way. The last season moved along at a molasses pace. This one's going a bit too fast. I think there's too many plot lines crisscrossing with each other. And I will agree with you with Alice. I do think they should have been more judicious with using her, which might have been tough, engaging an actress on a recurring basis instead of a series regular. I can understand the politics of that, but it seems that when she does appear, it should mean more instead of the new Alice development of the week. So there, and the problems I had with certain cast members last year continue. I don't think it's an exceptionally well cast show in regards to two particular actors. But it's a different show, and I'm glad it is. And I'm hoping that they can iron out the kinks, because I do think there's a really potent show that's underneath. And I hope they get to that. I also like it for the same reasons that you talk about, John. That we have not just the LGBTQ angle and some of the other issues, but now we have this this added conceit of race and of income inequality that I think is very important. And in Gotham is a great backdrop for that too. So. I'm optimistic about where the show goes. I don't give a shit about the Crows. I wish they would, it's not working. It's not working. There are some failures there, but there's a lot of good there, and I just think there's a really good show that's under the surface that I hope gets to the surface.
You know what Crows I really enjoy? The kind that are on another DC show, that are the school mascots for certain high school in Kansas. And what show would that be, Bill?
That would be a show called Superman and Lois, or as you keep calling it, Lois and Clark.
Lois and Clark. Or Superman and Lois and Jared and Jonathan.
So I guess I'll give the rundown on that. Superman and Lois is a new series based, on the Superman character. We have Tyler Hoechlin in the lead as Clark and Superman, and Elizabeth Tulloch, which I believe that's the correct pronunciation, as Lois. And they have two teenage sons, and I love this show so far. I absolutely love this show. Where we are with Superman right now is he has lost his job. Clark has at the Daily Planet, and his mother has recently passed away. So they decide to move to Smallville. They do have two teenage sons. John, which is a familiar name if you're there with the comic book, and oh my God, it's passing me the other kid,
Jordan.
Jared.
Jordan.
Jordan.
What?
Jordan. Not
Jordan.
Jordan.
Yeah.
Jordan. And the twins are very different. I think of one of my friends who literally has the cheerleader and the goth as children, and there's some of that, but they're not that one-dimensional. And in moving back to Smallville and starting new lives for four family members, for me, and I hope you guys agree with me on that, what the vibe that Man of Steel tried to accomplish in the Smallville sequences and failed, this accomplished within 30 seconds.
Oh yeah.
Completely agree.
And I'm very impressed with Tyler Hoechlin. I love that we have a Superman who is flawed, who is failing as a father in certain ways. Of course, some of that is due to his responsibilities, but you get to the nature of the character, and this is how I've always seen Superman. He's the best person in the world. There's a great old Silver Age story where it didn't matter what planet Kal-El landed on, he would have been a hero on that planet. He's just whether it was, what was in from the genes of Jor-El and Lara, or the lessons from Jonathan and Martha, he's an intensely good person. And why does the work email have to come in now? Okay, sorry about that. And though he is that type of person, he is a liar. And this show has found a way of really dealing with that in what I think is, I hate to use this word, but a realistic manner. I'm not as sold on Tulloch as Elizabeth, as Lois, but even I will admit that her chemistry with Tyler is dynamite. They really feel to me like they've been a couple for 15 years. Yeah. And the show has gone to some places that I think are kind of brave, not just Jordan, but another character, are dealing with mental health issues. And especially for a network that is, however you look at it, somewhat teen-centric, that's an important story to tell. And to have that representation on screen as well. There's a subplot with Luther that's not a Luther that we're used to. There's some other subplots with and I also did like that Sam Lane wasn't one note. Very often the general Sam Lane depiction is like Superman bad and that's it. This is something totally different. I've just been blown away by the show every week. Yeah, and I'm so glad it's there.
Very, very emotional. Some great emotional beats. I mean, there were some teary-eyed moments. There was some, just some really great dialogue between the boys and Clark, and Lois and Clark, and I'm really enjoying actually some of the side characters, like Lana. When she first popped in, the actress playing Lana, I was just sort of like, oh, this sounds like it's going to be kind of like a weird side character we're not really going to care too much about. But the cracks are starting to show, and I really, in episode 3, I think you get to see a little bit more of what's happening with the paint peeling off of her marriage and the her home life and her children and her relationship there. What she's trying to, sort of present to the town. But one of the things that you didn't mention is I like how they're depicting this small town, and there's, obviously a lot of small towns in the center of the country that are very similar to this, where, they used to be a lot of industry, there used to be a lot of stuff going on, but now, that's kind of dying. People are leaving, and there's not much there. So, one of the big subplots is, of course, Morgan Edge and his company are coming in to provide jobs, but in doing so, obviously exploiting, a population that's already depressed, that needs work and is willing to work for whatever amount of money that he's willing to throw at them, or, probably kryptonite experiments or whatever kind of craziness is going to happen here, because it is still a superhero show. But yeah, I mean, I really like seeing that aspect, that these three people really. I mean, Clark did grow up there, but Lois and the boys, they're not used to seeing this. They're not. They're coming from a big city where everything is like one really big thing, and here, this small town, their feelings and these people matter a lot. And you get to see that. You get to see, the emotional aspect of something, not just a parody of a small town. Even the old Smallville series, which I love, it holds a big place in my heart, didn't really get small town living all that well, because, man, everybody was like really well put together and had tons of money for the latest fashions. And, like, it's just not really.
Yeah.
Not really
the biggest problem for me with Smallville was it had so much CW-itis. It was mandatory.
It was One Tree Hill, but with Superman.
It was mandatory. Every third episode, someone had to say, "I thought you were my friend." I mean, the records of the Kents and Lana at Smallville General Hospital. My God, they must fill rooms. I mean, there was that, and that whole thing, like, I'm 23 and I'm the CEO of a major global network, that kind of nonsense. Smallville had a lot of CW-itis. The Flash does too, a little bit. The Flash still does too, a little bit. But
why'd you keep this from me? Yeah.
Thought you were my friend.
I thought you were my friend.
I would say
it will be at the end of the episode. Yeah, all right.
Yeah.
I would say towards Lois and Clark. First of all, not watching the show is your guys' fault. Just putting that out there. So following is all on you. I absolutely. First of all, it's been fun. It's been a lot of fun. So I've got the first 2 episodes done, and boy, that first episode has a lot to unpack. Right, when you're thinking about those previous Superman iterations, movies, shows, whatever. First of all, that actor got so much flack when he first came on Supergirl. So do you guys remember that? That's not Superman. He looks way too unhappy.
Short.
Yeah. Whatever. He's this, he's that. I don't know about you guys, but when he's up in the sky flying in his outfit, it gets a little toasty in the living room. Okay.
And on top of that, if you see him in other movies, like him in Everybody Wants Some,
right?
He's a very good actor.
Yeah.
Because he is all over the map with what he can do. Yeah. I'm so impressed with him.
I mean, I lusted after him when I first saw him in Teen Wolf. So,
so I just, it's past, totally just it. He really is putting on a good Superman. I love that you guys called out the humanity aspect of it. This is one reason why I don't read a lot of Superman literatures, because it's boring to me. I don't identify with it. This character, that interests me. Seeing him have struggles at home, struggles at work, changing it up where they're living, caring for his family. That is exciting to me, because that's a character that actually speaks to me a little bit. Someone that's perfect and untouchable, I just don't get into that. And so I freaking love this series, because I think it's going to bring a lot of people into the character and a lot of people into DC, and that maybe wouldn't have previously. So that is exciting to me. The mental health thing was another thing that jumped out at me. So a lot of CW shows really pride themselves on, a lot of that romance between characters. I actually don't get a lot of those vibes from these 2 episodes that I've seen so far. Like, sure, there's some puppy love with the kids or whatever, but this is like legit, like, family. Lois is here to rock it. And can we just give a nod to Lois's resignation letter? Hello?
This is the best piece of writing I've done since you started, since you bought this place.
Yeah. And that was before I saw what she wrote. The way she walked in there like a boss and just boom. And I just said, atta girl, that's awesome. So that was cool. Seeing her courage that her character portrayed when she went to the town hall meeting was another light bulb moment for me. I freaking love this character. I almost dropped the F-bomb. Sorry, guys. But I'm so on fire about it. So yes, I'm going to continue watching it because it's freaking awesome. And then finally, the one character I want to punch in the face means this guy is doing his acting great. Lana's husband just screams like, I'm a jerk store. I don't know, I'm a tool bag or whatever. So check this out, right? We're painting this picture of our town is not well off, right? But hey, come over to my place. Check out my 3-shelved grill where I'm handing out whole racks of ribs.
I thought the conception of that character, that was the most brilliant way of saying I'm a Trumper without ever going there. It was great. It was great. And plus the complication, even that guy isn't one level. Even that guy has, there are legitimate arguments to say, I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah.
You're gonna get fucked, but I do see where you're coming from.
That is actually, that's something that I like. I mean, he's a villain. He's like a non-powered, simple small town villain, but he's not just simple. I mean, there's a lot of truth to him and truth to his perspective that he's saying, and that his arguments that he's making are the same arguments that are being made every single day when you watch the news, when you hear some of the people who end up showing up in Congress. Like, I mean, those are the same arguments that they're making. And to him, it makes sense to do that, given his, what's happening in Smallville. So, yeah, no, I think
also on the third episode, an amazing fight sequence in the middle of all this. My God, that was one of the best fight sequences I've ever seen on a superhero show.
That motel sequence, and John, you're gonna love it. If you haven't seen it yet, you are going to love it.
You're gonna love it.
You're gonna love it.
Okay,
so cool.
Because you're gonna be like, I remember with Superman Returns, could he throw like one punch? Yeah, you get it here. For people that are jonesing for that boy, you're gonna get that. So,
okay.
Really, really well done show. Yes. I think the only one we haven't, though, I think we talked about them all. Riverdale.
Yeah.
I don't know. I still watch
Riverdale.
It.
I mean,
had a 7-year time jump. Yeah. And
Betty's in the FBI
just
now.
like Batwoman, way too many plot lines going on at once.
I think that's always been Riverdale.
Yeah. I've only seen season 1, and I absolutely loved it. But the main moral of the story, guys, I got from it, aside from how awesome it was I really want Jughead's hat. Like, I want that beanie so bad. So I might have to Google for that.
Well, by season 7, you have a beanie-less Jughead.
No!
Yeah.
Unacceptable. That hat is so legendary. Like, oh, man. I'm going to find one. So...
All right, the name of the show is Comic Book Bears, so we do need to talk about some actual comic books. I'm going to start, as I always do, with Steve, and we seem to have fallen into certain roles this week. I'll be doing DC books, John will be doing Marvel books, and Indie Steve will be setting it off right now. So, Steve, why don't you tell us about a book that you're reading that you're digging?
So, John alluded to it earlier, but Vault has been putting out some fantastic horror-themed comics, or darker themed comics. And one of the more recent ones, this one came out last month, was issue number 1. This is issue number 2, is The Picture of Everything Else. It's very different from a lot of their other the other works that they're putting out. This is written by Dan Waters with art and colors by Kishore Mohan. And basically, it's a period piece, takes place in Paris in the 1800s, about, I'm trying to think, or maybe the early 1900s. It's kind of around there. You actually have a young Picasso kind of makes his appearance in this issue, which is very interesting. But it's at its heart, it is an art piece. It is a critique about art. The main character himself is an artist who has some tragedy that happens to him. And a lot of it, of course, is the supernatural aspect of it. He witnesses something very horrific and very much kind of almost Lovecraftian situation involving another artist, an English artist, who has the ability to basically draw death. The subjects of his paintings, he can destroy whatever way he wants. He just paints them and paints their death. And I mean, as ridiculous and horrific as you can think of, he can slice the canvas and their head flies off, or he sets it on fire and wherever they are, they just completely are immolated. But that was the first issue. Now, by the second issue, he is stopped painting completely, and he's just sort of thrown himself into the Parisian art critique scene. He's now an art critic. He cannot paint it, fills his head with like migraines and fear, and because he knows what he's seen and he doesn't want any part of that. His lover, on the other hand, it has gone off to become the apprentice to this evil artist. He encounters him a little bit later on in a salon, and his former partner is like, why don't you come to the dark side, essentially. You just don't understand what he can do. He can remake reality. And of course, what are you going to do? Our hero has to go and see what's what in order to try and stop this monster from enacting more evil. But of course, it's never that simple. So pick up issue number 2, and it is a short series. I think it's only about 5 issues, but in 2 issues, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot to read, by the way. So be prepared to bring your glasses on this one. You've got a lot to read and some beautiful art to look at. So the picture of everything else by Waters and Mohan, and of course it is out by Volt Comics.
All right. Let's move over to John. John, tell us about something you're reading that you're digging.
All right, so something that I'm digging, but unfortunately I've already hit rock bottom because the series is over 3 issues in, as anticipated. It was advertised that way. But King in Black's offering of the limited series Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts for me is very meaningful because Dark Avengers, kind of the Thunderbolts series in Dark Reign fed into the Dark Avengers, and so I always have a soft place in my heart for villains trying to do good or pretend to do good for ominous reasons, whichever. And so the Thunderbolts original lineup with Kurt Busiek on the 1s and 2s was absolutely outstanding. I love that run. This was certainly not that. It was a different creative team and different characters, but I'm like, I am in. Like, let's give it a shot. It's going to be just a small event tie-in kind of a thing. You got characters that I don't know anything about, like Mr. Fear and Baltrack. Never met them at all. But then you got a character like Star, who originated from the pages of Captain Marvel and had her own limited run recently. And I'm like, holy smokes, I'm glad I picked up that 5-issue mini run, or what I think it was 5 issues. And it was fun to get to know her. So I'm like familiar with her, check. And then we got Taskmaster up in here. Total not a team player. So I'm like, this is going to be amazing. I'm all in. Like, let's see how this goes. One of my biggest regrets here was I was so excited about Wilson Fisk assembling this team, and Rhino was one of the team members. I don't read a lot of Spidey, and so Rhino is just one of those core Spider-Man villains. So I'm like, cool, I'll get to know him. First issue, ducks out of the team. That's it. Like the non-committal spirit of Thunderbolts. And it's the funniest thing, but I was so annoyed as a reader because I'm like, I wanted to see him. Like, I just wanted to read more and see the dialogue. I know it's limited and it's like one-off kind of stuff. The characters that did stick around, though, really delivered. It truly was a lot of fun. There was absolutely minimal loyalty to the team cause, to the contract with Wilson Fisk. I mean, it was just a lot of stuff that took me back to Dark Reign with the Dark Avengers of why are we doing this exactly? And so during a time when we're overrun with symbiotes, we still have time to pick on each other, to make fun of each other, to call each other out on stupid stuff. It really was a quirky group of people that did not want to work together, and I enjoyed every issue of it, all 3 of them. And at the end of the issue, this was the moment I was hoping for, so I'm dropping a big spoiler, but at the end, Taskmaster and the team trick Wilson Fisk, portraying that they all died, when in fact they hadn't, and they walk into his office, and he's given this, like, testimony of how awesome they were and how heroic they were, and they're like, dude, we're still alive. And then they're like, also, we're just going to go find more work to do because we got work to do together. So it sounds like they want to stick together. So fingers crossed for an ongoing. I will completely read it because, again, I don't know anything about Mr. Fear or Baltrack as characters. Star is really cool as a character. I'm really enjoying her. And then Taskmaster is one that, I mean, I want to get more and more familiar with him, but I suspect from what I've read of his limited runs where it's a solo run, that he really is a standalone, work-alone character, like a Deathstroke, right? So seeing him in a team environment, to me, is really weird. So I'll be open to seeing it, though, how it goes if they do it again. But yeah, definitely a lot of fun moments in here. And it made it bearable. It kind of was a bummer that it was tied in with the King in Black event. It could have been without it, in my opinion. Yeah. And the other neat moment in here was they had to get 2 halves of the Sentry, the Superman ripoff character in Marvel. He got torn in half by Null, so they went and found his legs somewhere, and then they had to fish out his like torso from the river, and then like wrapped him together, and he was like a bomb for them or something, with all of his power. So it was the most ridiculous thing ever. But they're just lugging this dead Sentry around. It was so great. It was delightful. So yeah.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. So random. It's so weird. But I was like, yes.
Okay. I received my DCBS box on Saturday. So over the next few days, I went through 37 DC books that were in there. The majority of them were Future State.
Yeah.
I already said La Bamba. I had to do something else. But there was one Future State book I did really, really like. I liked Dark Detective, which was the Tamako Batman, and she's going to be the regular writer on Detective. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm also very encouraged by Philip Kennedy Johnson's writing on Superman House of L. This is a one-shot that, and Steve, I know you're passing it. I know it's only about like 43 pages of story or so. Mm-hmm. Didn't it feel like you read a whole graphic novel?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was really filled. It's filled with new characters, where we are in Future State. And God forbid anybody, if they ever try to put a Future State calendar together, because nothing really fits, but it's over, so we're good. But we're in the future. We're on the moon. We're on Earth's moon. And it is inhabited by a collection of Superman devotees. Some of them are from Earth, some of them are from other planets. This one here, Theander, is half Thanagarian, half Earthling. There's also a Blue Lantern, and that makes a lot of sense since blue is the color of hope, and that's something that's directly correlative to Superman. It's a very basic story that happens. There is a character, the Red King, that is attacking various posts in the future in the universe, and the Red King may or may not be Orion, as dictated by one of the other books in here. But it shows that the legacy of Superman continues. We also have an appearance at the end by a character which may or may not be John Kent, which ties into some other stories recently in the DC universe. You also have a very hot Silver Daddy version of who we think is Kal-El. And Jesus. I mean, this scene where he's got his boot on the younger guy. That's the stuff.
Maybe I should be getting that. I don't know.
That's the stuff you can get away with on the Comic Book Bears podcast. But there certainly have been a lot of stories in the past, like whether it was Grant Morrison's Superman Beyond or Supremacy and Supreme that Alan Moore wrote, which is a Superman analog. We've had this collection and legacy of Superman stories before. But I have to say, I am very excited now about Philip Kennedy Johnson having control of this particular franchise, because he certainly knows what makes that character tick. And in some ways did that through an expression through other characters that was very interesting. So if you can still find it, get it. Really liked it. Steve, you liked it too?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. You said, the basic premise of it is, they're protecting Earth, or the city on the moon, as a last outpost before Earth from this mysterious Red King who's just sort of, running roughshod through the galaxy.
Yeah. We should mention their headquarters is the Fortress of Sanctuary.
Yes.
That's probably what I'm mentioning.
But it just kind of drops you in the middle of this conflict. So it's it's been going on. Here's a whole bunch of characters, some that you kind of recognize, some that you're wondering, how does this character actually fit in somewhere? Like Brendan. Who is Brendan? Where does Brendan come from? And who did he hook up with? Which Thanagarian did he hook up with? but you know, there's some really interesting information here and characters that they throw in, and they don't really need to do much introduction, because they all are kind of, in a way, aspects of Clark Kal-El Superman that we've kind of seen over the years, you know, sort of personified in these other characters. So pretty cool. And yeah, Johnson did a great job, and I think he's got a good future with the Superman franchise.
Yep. Okay, Steve, let's go back to you there. Talk about another book that you're reading and digging from Indie World.
So I've, you know, and I've talked about them before, but AWA, Artists with Attitude, or whatever, AWA Studios has been putting out some amazing stuff. So I've actually just been picking up everything that they have every month. So this is issue number 1 of Chariot that came out last week. I had no idea what this book was about before I picked it up. I was like, it's got AWA in the corner. I'll buy it. I don't know what it's about, what's going to happen with it. I had no expectations, and honestly, I loved it. So for one thing, you can kind of tell sort of from, you know, if you want to judge your book by the cover, you've got brooding possible hero, fast, interesting car, sort of like, you know, holographic, you know, 80s chick. Basically, there you go. There's the book. It is, it's crazy. It's wacky. There's some really beautiful colors in here by Marco Lesko. Brian Edward Hill is the writer. Priscilla Petraides is the artist. But I mean, just some beautiful layouts. The basic story is there's some, you know, 2-bit criminal who is trying to go straight, and he's trying to take care of his poor sick kid. But unfortunately, he still owes money to the worst of the worst. And so, you know, in order to try and keep his kid healthy, he decides to go and see if he can do some work for this, you know, minor crime boss. And in the meantime, he's also a car mechanic. He's been fixing up this interesting car that seemed to have fallen in his lap that is unlike any kind of car that he's seen before. And of course, while he's working on that, 2-bit criminal shows up and says, buddy, we're going to rough you up. I know you're going to do work for us. You still owe me money. We're just going to make you bleed in the meantime. You still owe us the money afterwards. And the car comes to his rescue, like Kit style, you know, Knight Rider. It's got a mind of its own. Something's going on with this. And lo and behold, apparently there seems to be a ghost in the machine. And it's a very sort of 80s interesting, like, dude, what's going on? It's very cool. I love it. I think it's really great. And what makes it even more fun, and AWA does this in the back of all of their number 1s, is they have sort of quick letters from the author and from the artist explaining why they like this. Brian Edward Hill writes a single page. So you're like, okay, you think it's cool. Thanks for buying the book. Awesome. But Priscilla Petraides, she throws it out there. The aesthetic of this book is purely her, it feels like. She loved all those 80s action movies as a kid. And then, you know, as she got older, she incorporated a lot of anime and sort of like new Japanese sort of cyberpunk. And she threw it all together, and this is what you have for this beautiful aesthetic. So really enjoyed it. Really great. Pick it up if you want to have fun with it. It's a 5-issue series. Chariot by AWA.
I feel like Chariot's really given me, you know, Knight Rider is a great nod. Mm-hmm. I got to give it up the Love Bug, baby. Come on. that Volkswagen just saved so many days. Like, that's where it's at. So
it's like Herbie, but if Herbie were curvy, had a holographic mini skirt. I think that's it. And, you know, and not to you know, give it the fan service, but it is just a beautiful design of a book, and the characters are very well drawn. You know, the main sort of big lug is kind of woofy. He's got some hairy forearms that I enjoy.
All right, over to John.
You. All right. I don't know how I can follow hairy forearms, but I'll do my best here. Also on the Marvel train, you guys, all aboard the X-Men train, but in a way different direction. Hellions issue number 10. Hellions is a big hell yeah. So 10 issues deep. The fact that we've made it this far blows my mind. So first of all, the assortment of characters in this book is genius. And I say that about a lot of the X titles, but this one really means a lot to me. First of all, we got Greycrow from the Marauders, so the original group of mutants that slaughtered the Morlocks under the streets, and it was an X-Men all-mutant event where Angel like lost his wings and all that stuff. And just seeing him as a standalone character now with a group of different people and getting to know him has been really meaningful. Empath from the original Hellion, so Emma Frost's students who were all massacred originally, and getting to know him and how manipulative he is also been an experience. Havoc, so Cyclops' brother, is in this group, and they're expanding on how he kind of has he's just that second follow-up brother. He's not Cyclops, he's not worth anything, that kind of stuff. He has a little bit of insecurity going on. They're really riding that out in this series, talking about his love with Madeline Pryor, the clone of Jean Grey. So that's been really cool. Psylocke's in the mix as the team leader. Good luck with that. And then Orphan Maker and Nanny are two characters I know absolutely nothing about. They are very quirky and weird. But the star of the show, of course, is Sassy Mr. Sinister. And you guys have probably heard me talk about him before, but I just can't get enough. Like, Bar Sinister on the Flame On Discord server where we're at, that's so great. But just Mr. Sinister in this just really shines. This issue actually opens up with Arcade's a classic, Marvel villain who's got his big green bow tie on and makes dangerous environments. So he's kidnapped everybody. And he's got Mr. Sinister strapped to a table, and he's literally pulling his teeth out one at a time. Like, it is brutal, it is fierce, and it's just such a dark side to the Arcade character. And I'm living for it. Like, I love it so much. Mr. Sinister is forced to make a deal with him because of this, which has been very entertaining. And it's very odd seeing Mr. Sinister get bitch slapped around by a character like Arcade. Usually that should be the other way around, in my mind. So it's very interesting how the tables turn. Ultimately, this book just continues to delight. I never know what I'm getting into with the next issue. But for me, it's all about learning about more of the characters and seeing just how they adapt to these various scenarios. I can't speak highly enough of it, but a lot of these X titles are really rocking my socks right now. So Hellions is definitely one of my gold medalists, though, for sure.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. The only book I've stayed with was X-Men. I bailed on New Mutants about issue 13 or so. I am pre-ordering the first issue of X-Corp. That seemed pretty interesting. Yeah. Steve, what X books are you still with?
All of them.
All of them?
All of them. Still have all of them. I even picked up Demon Days, the new Peach, new Peach Momoko book, translated from Japanese. Yep, it's beautiful. It's really cool. Very, very manga in its style and composition. Yeah.
Okay. Switching over to the distinguished competition, I did want to spend some time talking about Infinite Frontier, which sets the stage for the next stage of the DC universe, and we all have copies here. Much like DC Rebirth in 2016, it basically is a jumping on point for a lot of people, and a lot of new stories. Principal writer is Joshua Williamson, with James Tynion IV and Scott Snyder basically putting it together, but a bunch of other writers and artists involved in the mix. We do have the first sighting of the Bendis written Justice League in a short sequence that has Superman, Flash, and Black Adam, or Shazadam, as it is controversially known. But I should backtrack to say that the core story is involved. As if you were reading the end of the Dark Knight's
Death Metal.
Death Metal. Death Metal. Jesus. Wonder Woman has effectively attained godhood, and she is invited to become part of the quintessence with Shazam, Highfather, Hera, Phantom Stranger, and who the hell else?
Ganthet.
And Shazam.
No, Ganthet.
Ganthet. You're right. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Already said. Yeah, I got them all. and she questions whether she should be joining this group. And to show her that life is going on, the Spectre takes her through the infant frontier of the newly birthed multiverse and where certain characters are. Probably the most focus in press has been the story of Alan Scott, where he is coming out to his adult children, Jade and Obsidian. Got into it a little bit on Facebook today with somebody who just didn't mean to offend, but was just inarticulate. And I have to say that bit really, really resonated with me. I came out to myself at 27. I came out to other people at 30. I know what it's like to keep something bottled up, for a particular time period in adulthood, and to see some representation of that, especially in a familiar character, it just meant a lot to me. And I just thought those 4 pages were just so beautifully handled. And whoever is going to be shepherding the what has to be a Justice Society book in the mix. I hope they do present something with as much care and sensitivity as you saw in those pages. I just thought it was a beautiful sequence. It was interesting with the Batman story, which does pop up in 3 different places in the book. The event will become to known as A-Day, where there is a gas attack, variation of the Joker gas, and apparently kills a major villain. Maybe he looked kind of fucked up, so I wouldn't be surprised if that's a bait and switch. But the most interesting thing about that is a major plot point in both the next issues of Batman and the first issue of the new Suicide Squad. Major plot point. So I think you will need this to get that, because there wasn't even much of a recap. It was just the references and actually some action happening contemporaneously with that in regards to Suicide Squad. We also have glimpses of what's going on with the Yara Flor Wonder Girl, and who will be ascending to the role of Wonder Woman. We do have the first glimpse of Teen Titans Academy. We have some goings on with John Kent in terms of the Superman world. And again, that is written by Philip Kennedy Johnson. We do have an interesting interlude with Green Arrow and Black Canary, which presents the return of a particular character that was previously dead, but now apparently is alive. And again, that was addressed in Death Metal, that is part of the rebirth of the multiverse. We have the first, and this is amazing to think, the first Stargirl pages written by Jeff Johns in over 10 years. And she's going to have a special. And that also reintroduces one of my favorite teams of the past in what we assume is the Seven Soldiers of Victory. We have the glimpse of the new Green Lanterns. We also see Barry Allen passing the mantle of the Flash once again to Wally, because the Flash will be assisting with some of the other characters that are essentially in a monitoring position of what this new universe and this new infant frontier. And then we have what I really hope are some comic book deaths at the end. So, and the reintroduction just from a few weeks ago with Justice League Odyssey, but the reintroduction of a very big bad. So, as a jumping on point, I'm certain there are people that would still be scratching their heads in regards to who this is, but I thought it was very effective.
Yeah. I love that splash page. That sort of like let's get a poster of this, because that's just a really cool way to.
Just a tie-in. I don't have this week's books yet, but I did get the last week's books, and again, under the Infinite Frontier banner, you did have, Batman, Suicide Squad, and Swamp Thing and I thoroughly enjoyed all of them. So
Excellent.
especially after that terrible taste in my mouth from Future State, I'm very excited about where things are going.
So, Future State, is it better or worse than would you say of New 52 World's End?
Oh, New 52 World's End was like, that was so sad it was funny. It just got ridiculous. It just got so ridiculous.
Everybody's a brother.
World's End is
demon.
that series is kind of in its own world. No pun intended. I mean, that was just relentlessly depressing.
Yeah.
It was just, these. How can't you give any of these people a break for like one day? Even when they land on the, even where they effectively land where they are, there's instant betrayals, and it's a manufacturer. Bad memories.
Yeah.
Future State was just the thing with me with Future State. If this was the direction that editorial thought people wanted, brother, you just were not on the mark at all, and I'm so glad that didn't happen.
Yeah.
So what'd you think about Infinite Frontier?
With Infinite Frontier, for me, I actually got to give it up to my boy Jay Crane for that hat. I mean, come on, that hat though. So I'll be honest with you, I got Batman 106 again somewhere in my mountains here. Oh, there it is. Batman 106, and I saw on this cover, and I love this cover, by the way, the simple yellow and then with the beautiful cosmic colors in the middle. But then I'm looking closer, I'm like, what is that hat? Then I read Infinite Frontier, and I'm just like, oh, okay, I'm good. So this issue to me, I kind of got done with it, and I thought to myself, it is selling everything that's coming up, but they did it in a way that was intelligent to me as a reader, and I actually really enjoyed it, like getting to see the whole catalog. Stargirl, I share that excitement. I love the show. I thought it was a lot of fun. And so getting to see nods to it in the books here, I'm like, yes, like that was a really fun one. I'm looking forward to seeing where we're going. Now, I'm not familiar with the character that came out. So can you kind of enlighten me and maybe other viewers a little bit? I might be the only one, actually. I don't know. But I'm just not familiar with that character at all because I haven't read a lot of DC. So the gentleman that came out, what was he like, I guess, in previous issues? I don't know the character at all. So
which character was this?
The character Scott that came out to his kids.
Oh, Alan Scott. Okay, so Alan Scott is the original Green Lantern. We're talking 1940. Made his first appearance way back in All American Comics.
Okay.
When they did meld the universes, they tried to make some explanation about why this dude has a Green Lantern when there's a Green Lantern Corps that he's not connected with, and it's never really worked. So you just accept he's the Green Lantern before there was Green Lantern.
Okay.
What you really know is Green Lantern.
Okay.
For the majority of his time, he was depicted as a straight man. Had children he wasn't aware of from a former wife who was also a super villain, then hero, and then sort of villain again, named Harlequin. And he's had his life extended through various means. One was through Valhalla, through the fights at Ragnarok. Then he became young again. Also, since the ring is based on magic, he is a magic character, and for a time was becoming a character named Sentinel, so that you didn't confuse him with the other Green Lanterns. So, he's an 80-year-old character, and when they did the New 52 version and they had the Earth 2 comic, that version of the character was gay, and apparently they decided that this would be a trope that would follow him into this rebirth universe version of his. And the two characters that you saw, Obsidian and Jade, who were members of Infinity Inc., which was basically the children of the Justice Society of America. They did not know initially, and he did not know initially, that they were his children, but eventually that was discovered. And he was,
Yeah,
you
and
know, for a lot
Obsidian.
of the times, he was really the Justice Society's heavy hitter.
Mhm.
You know,
Mhm.
since Superman wasn't a part of the most of the stories, and you even see some wonderful dialogue about that in a series that if you haven't read, you really should, called The Golden Age, written by James Robinson with art by Paul Smith, which is, you know, effectively an Elseworld story, but it could fit if you'd sneak it in the right way. And the depiction there is really interesting too. So
Cool.
that's who
Awesome.
he is. Yeah.
Yeah.
and
James
he'll also
actually.
be. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
No,
Go
no,
ahead.
on.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, James also did mention it. Anybody get Morrison's Wonder Woman Earth 1, the third volume?
Next
I have
DCBS
not.
box. Next DCBS
Yeah.
box. Yeah.
So, because speaking of Elseworlds and interesting retellings.
Also interesting. I was like, oh, I didn't get that Batman. I got the variant, the wraparound.
Mm.
But Crane with the busy head. He's over here.
I just love that hat, man. It's such a cool look.
It's a party hat.
So great. and I completely agree. Batman 106 was fantastic.
Yep.
So I guess it's not even just being excited about being past the Future State collection that occurred, but I'm excited to get back to normal issue numbering. I'm very particular about that. So I'm very excited to get back to order, back to normal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Steve, anything you want to add about Infinite Frontier?
No, Fafi Fufa. Basically, I really enjoyed the connective story of Wonder Woman. Basically, Spectre is actually one of my old school favorite DC characters, but having him and Wonder Woman sort of talk as omniscient beings essentially, and going through and seeing what's happening right now, setting up all the stories that are to come for 2021, 2022. It was really nice. It was a great method to do that, and it was just nice seeing her sort of like in that sort of like godlike persona.
Yeah,
and then of course
also it's still Diana, and it's still the character
Yeah.
that you're used to, just dealing with another facet of what has become her life. It's really good. It was really, really good.
Yeah. One thing before we go further, Sci-Fi Explosion, is that someone that we know? Maybe. Those blacklight posters John has up are stunning, and yes, they are.
Thank you.
If you're gonna make that gentleman happy, it's got as long as he's displaying something retro, he'll be happy.
Oh yes,
very, very much so. Another thing I loved is that they set the Justice Society brownstone in Battery Park, because I worked in Battery Park for a year and a half, and now I just have these visions of me on a lunch break, like, I'm going to go to the Justice Society brownstone and see if anyone's around. Hey there, Jay Garrick.
Security's lax. I'm sure they leave the doors wide open. I mean, people are just waltzing in all the time.
All right, we're a little bit over a lot of time. Not that that's a big deal, but that is a sign that we should start wrapping up. And when we wrap an episode of the Comic Book Bears podcast up, we do so with a segment we call the Woofs of the Week segment. In the bear community, if you find a fellow attractive, you woof at him. And we do something similar. This is where we signify something which may be a comic book, but it also may be a film or a TV program or a charitable initiative, anything under the sun that we think you, fair listener or viewer, may be interested in sampling. I'll start, as I always do, with Steve. Steve, what is your woof of the week?
Well, I did want to say, Bill, one of your woofs the other week was talking about the Go-Go's movie. I did watch it. I loved it. And it immediately made me start listening to all of their greatest hits albums. So I just, have had the Go-Go's on pretty much every time I've had music on for the past week and a half. But my woof is a very odd TV woof. It is a UK TV woof, as usual. But it's a daily competition show, so 5 nights a week. A show called Draws Off, where you have 5 amateur life painters, so portrait painters. Basically, compete, and every day one of them gets to be the live model that the other 4 paint. And so it's really interesting seeing everybody's styles, but also the winner of that day is always picked by the subject. So the model of that day gets to pick who was their favorite, and you have some interesting portraits that get drawn. So some of them are interesting, and the models have had some surprises as to what people drew of them and how they were depicted. But you have some really great artists. You've got some really terrible artists, but it's fun to watch. And the host is catty and silly, as in British hosts can be. So I recommend it. It's called Draws Off, as in drawers off. And you can see it on Channel 4 Monday through Friday if you're in the UK.
Okay, let's move over to John. John, what is your Wolf of the Week?
All right, you guys, bring in another strong arm Marvel title. This one, highly controversial when it was announced last year. Much like the Superman actor, this got a lot of flack because people like to, throw stones so much. You say you're a fan of something, then you act the exact opposite. Some of you need to pump your brakes online. So for real, this Children of the Atom book #1 came out. The news came out of, there's going to be a group of 5 younger characters that mimic or the appearance slightly or the abilities of X-Men characters, and everybody lost their mind. This creative team doesn't know what they're doing. Why are they ruining our characters? All this hurtful stuff. You guys, if you're a fan of the X-Men, you embrace different. You try new things. Relax. Okay. So it is so. I was so excited to get it just because I'm like, I've been wanting to just try it out so that I can have my own opinion. And so Children of the Atom issue #1 was completely just random and delightful. The character names are so weird that I just have to share them because they're mimicking 5 of the X-Men characters here. We have Cherub, so that's the guy with wings that's flying. We have Marvel guy, so that's the bigger Jean Grey character. Cyclops-Lass, so it's a female Cyclops. Gimmick is a female Gambit-esque character, and then Daycrawler instead of Nightcrawler. And this is really interesting because the superhero bits at the start of the issue are fun, but the real fun is when they start talking in the middle, just as kids at school. And it was really fun to get to see these characters stand up to a bully. So there was a lot of modern tones where a bully's like, mutants are dirty and you're siding with them. So it really touched upon how divided our country has been a little bit. And it was really fun to see the main character stand up to a bully and say, nah, bro, I don't agree with you. Sorry. And just kind of standing up for herself and, the fact that mutants are cool. There's also a lot of division on this one on Krakoa going on. So Wolverine's like, no, we need to get these kids to the island to keep them safe. And Jean Grey's like, maybe we should just talk to him first instead of kidnapping him. Could be a thing. So at the end of the book, I'm going to spoil it just because it was such a great moment. But at the end of the book, the kids try to step through the gate and walk out the other side, and they're still in the same place. So they didn't even go to Krakoa. So the plot thickens of where do they get these abilities from? It's interesting to me, and I really like the division it's causing on Krakoa. I love that their circumstances are mirroring that of Kitty Pryde, why she can't go through the gates. So it really makes me start thinking of what the heck's going on, So to me, is it as solid as Hellions? Obviously not. I mean, I love Sassy Sinister, but was it as bad as everyone made it out to be? No way. You got to give it a shot. And if you're going to have an opinion, at least read the first issue. And don't knock the creators, man. I mean, this was a fresh idea, in my opinion. I liked it. So.
Wasn't this originally supposed to come out sometime last year, just right around the start of the pandemic? So I think this has been delayed almost a full year.
Yes. Yep.
From when it was originally announced.
Yep. So absolutely loved it. But so that's my whiff of the week, though, for sure, is just trying something new and going against the old grain. So.
Okay, cool. Something Steve and I have both been doing in tandem have been watching some punk rock documentaries. Red Saunders.
Red.
Yeah. But that's not my wolf of the week. It carried over into watching some other things. And this is a film I've seen before, but I decided to watch it again for whatever reason. It's streaming on Amazon Prime for free, and I think on either Roku, at least one other outlet. and it's the film This Is Not a Photograph, the Mission of Burma story. Mission of Burma were a group that were labeled as a hardcore group from Boston who were active initially from 1979 to 1983. By my estimation, they were one of those groups like Husker Du and the Minutemen, though they carried the hardcore label that really didn't do them justice in a sense because they were much more complex. If people are familiar with math rock and acts like the Dillinger Escape Club, this is very much an antecedent of that. Some great songs that they put together in their initial short period of time together. And they broke up in 1983 because of the tinnitus and other hearing problems of the guitarist of the band, Roger Miller. And in 2002, they reformed. And though the band has since split up again, again, this is a 2016 film, they were active as a live unit from 2002 through 2016, and just confirmed the breakup very quietly and very amicably last year. It's an amazing story because this band was effectively cut off at the limbs because of health issues. Only released one studio album called Versus in 1982, and as part of the reunion, ended up recording 4 more studio albums in their existence. So to see a group get a second chapter is really interesting, and there was over time a lot of acts have championed them, whether it's Sonic Youth or Moby. The group Versus from Boston actually takes their name from their first album. And you also get to see the personalities of the 3 members of the band, who are very different people. One went off as an Emmy award-winning TV producer, and the other 2 stayed in music and in certain degrees and to certain degrees of success. But just watching this movie again and seeing people who just seem to be really decent guys, enjoying a trip that I don't think they ever thought they would be on again. This is a really, really touching story. And it's, as I said, it's a 2016 film. You have 14 more years of history after that. But it was the start of something, effectively a second act for this group. And again, that's called This Is Not a Photograph, the Mission of Burma story. And it is on Amazon Prime. And most of their recordings, apart from some live stuff, is available on Spotify if you want to check that out. So that's my Wolf of the Week. Someday, maybe we should fill people in on Red Saunders. So,
yeah. Well, they'd have to watch White Riot in order to really see Red in his prime and in his prime and is still in his prime.
Yeah.
John, I wanted to make sure that we promote Comic Book Look as well. And I do have, hopefully, if it'll let me, the YouTube channel, which I'm trying to add to the chat right now. And let me see if I can bring that up so that we have that. YouTube.com user A Comic Book Look, and of course the featured is the main page, but you can see all of is it all of your back your back episodes?
So our episodes, we used to call them issues, and so we have them organized into long boxes. So issues 1 through 50, 50 through 100, etc. And then there's a lot of side things too, like I was interviewing creators where I met the Black Light posters as part of that series, and then a lot of one-off things, including me very intoxicated at one of my birthday parties. So that was a very interesting time. But definitely do connect with us, you guys. We would love to get to conversate with you during our videos as well, and we've loved getting to know these guys here or Comic Book Bears. I always want to say Comic Book Bears, but yep, that is our YouTube channel, so feel free to subscribe. How else to connect with us? On Twitters, I am @JohnOnDemand, just like my screen name says on here, or you can find Tom and I collectively at @A Comic Book Look. We are also on Facebook with the Comic Book Look, just our group. So if you do want to join to continue the conversation, we'd love just our nonstop banter. People are posting stuff all the time. It's fun. So
awesome. Thank you.
All right, cool. So John, thank you so much for joining us for tonight.
Thank you.
Very much appreciated. I have a feeling it's going to be the first of many appearances. So
Thank you.
I'm so glad. It was, I was like, kind of like, oh, when's John going to comment on the live feed? So I was like,
John's really quiet tonight. Yeah.
I was like, oh, you're so stupid. All right. So anyway, we're going to wrap this one up for good. Again, we are the Comic Book Bears podcast. You can find us on the Twitter and the Tumblr and the Instagram as Comic Book Bears. You can find us on the Facebook as Comic Book Bears podcast. If you want to listen to us, you can download us through iTunes, listen to us through Stitcher Radio, and many of the other podcasting platforms. If you want to write to us, please do so by sending an email to comicbookbears@gmail.com, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel where you get to see us stream effectively mostly every week. We take a few breaks here and there, but we have been streaming since the beginning of the pandemic, and there's no end in sight for this aspect of us, so we're just going to keep going. On that aspect, Steve is not usually in the tech seat, so Steve, thank you so much for taking care of everything tonight. Really, really appreciate that. Thank you.
Very grateful for Brian, for especially right when we started, for being there for us just in case anything went horribly wrong.
And if you're listening to the audio version, you're going to hear a wolf and an explosion, and we'll be back real soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Goodbye.